Hello sir, my name is Marina Nababan and I'm from British History SS2B, and now I would like to present about the assignment for final examination. It is about the material of British history. For the first time, I would like to present about the Puritan Age. Okay, the definition of Puritan Age is a member of a group of Protestants that arose in the 16th century within the Church of England, demanding the simplification of doctrine and worship and greater strictness in religious discipline. During part of the 17th Puritans become a powerful political party. Okay, next about the introduction of Puritans. Puritans were members of religious reform movement known as Puritanism that arose within the Church of England in the late 16th century. The name Puritans because they were sometimes called as precisionists, was a term of contempt assigned to the movement by its enemies. Okay, the next I would like to present about the reign of Puritanism. The first is Elizabethan. The reign of Elizabeth I of England from 1558 until 1603 saved the rise of the Puritan movement in England. It clashed with the authorities of the Church of England and is temporarily effective suppression as a political movement in the 1590 by judicial means. And the next is the reign of Jacobean. The accession of James I broke the millenary petition Puritan Manifesto of 1603 for reform of the English Church, but James wanted a new religious settlement along different lines. The characteristic of Puritanism is of Puritan was combined with the doctrine of predestination inherited from Calvinism to produce a covenant theology, a sense of themselves as elect spirits chosen by God to live godly lives, both as individuals and as a community. And the next is about Restoration Age. The definition of Restoration Age is the English literature written during the historical period, commonly referred to as the English Restoration. It is from 1660 until 1689, which correspond to the last year of the direct Stuart reign in England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And the historical background, the Restoration period is from 1660 until 1698. During the interregnum, Cromwell, as his cronies, has strict rules and censorship in place to limit any publication, and it met in England. What resulted was a domination of puritanical literature, religious tracts and pamphlets. And then in Restoration Age, there is poetry. Poetry was just as important to literature in the Restoration era, and many of those known as playwrights were also known as poets. Many people too considered Beowulf as England epic poem, but this works was legally known during the Restoration era. And then in Restoration Age, there is theater. Charles II developed a taste of theater while at the court of France, as well as the new Spanish dramas taking England. He also held Catholic sympathies and enjoyed the fact entry of the Hagmas. And then the next, I would like to present about the Augustan Age. The Augustan Age in the history of English language and literature is considered to be synonymous with the 18th century in the history of Britain. But this age virtually began in the final decades of the 17th century and includes the trends expressed in the writings of authors like John Dryden and Daniel Defoe. And then in Augustan Age, there is the reign. For the first is George I. It is from 1714 until 1727. When Queen Anne died without an heir, the Parliament called the Duke of Hanover. His mother was the granddaughter of King James I. He became the king, the little George I. He spoke not English but only German. For the second, there is George II. His reign was marked by the presence and influence of Sir Horace Walpole, who became the first prime minister and remained in power for more 20 years. Walpole managed to govern England well and peacefully, but after 1726, his government was accused of corruption. In 1742, he resigned his office. And the last is the reign of George III. It is from 1760 until 1801. His reign was marked by a series of military conflict. The American Wars of Independence. It is at 1776. And then next, I would like to present about the transition to Romantic Age. As a term to cover the most distinctive writers who flourished in the last year of the 18th Romantic is indispensable but also a little misleading. There was no self-styled Romantic movement at that time. And then in transition to Romantic Age, there is poetry like Wordsworth and Coleridge. It is misleading to read the poetry of the first Romantics as if it had been written primarily to express their feeling. In transition to Romantic Age, there is poets of the early Romantic period. In his own lifetime, black poetry was scarcely known. St. Walter Scott, by contrast, was thought of as a major poet for his vigorous and evocative verse narrative, The Lay of the Last Minstrel. Okay, next I would like to present about the Victorian Age. The Victorian era of British history was the period of Queen Victoria reign from 20 June 1837 until her death on 22 January 1901. It was a long period of peace, prosperity, refined sensibilities, and national self-confidence save for Britain. The characteristic of Victorian period it is while the country saw economic progress, poverty and exploitation were also equally part of it. The gap between the rich and the poor increased significantly, and the drive for material and commercial success was seen to propagate a kind of moral decay in the society itself. And then There's also Victorian novels. Victorian era is seen as the link between Romanticism of the 18th century and the Realism of the 20th century. The novel as a genre rose to entertain the rising middle class and to depict the contemporary life in a changing society. And then the next, there is a popular Victorian author. The first is Charles Dickens, published the first parts of his novel Oliver Twist. And then the second, William Makepeace Thackeray. It is English Victorian writer. And the last is Mrs. Gaskell. And then the last, I would like to present about the last material. It is about modern period. After Queen Victoria died in 1901, came the period which saw writers like Joseph Conrad. The most important event in the early part of the 20th century was the First World War that took place from 1914 to 1918. It was a crucial event that changed the way of the people and also the way of the world, impacted the physics of the people and also the way literature was written. And then there is the Georgian poets and world war in modern era. During the reign of George was published 5 anthologies of poetry by Edward Marsh in the years 1912. Many important writers like of the time, like Edward Thomas, Robert Graves, D.H. Lawrence contributed to these anthologies. And then there is modernism. Modernism as a movement was a response to the horror of World War I and to the rising industrial societies and growth of cities in the late of the 19th and early 20th century. It challenged the harmony and sought to reinvent art and literature of the age. And then there is thematic and technical features of modern literature. The conception that reality could be easily be comprehended was replaced by modernism with a more subjective argument. Reality became not was directly seen but what was behind the apparent surfaces, and it took a crude look at the gleam, the stark behind the glossy surfaces. Okay, the last is about there is overview of modern age literature. James Joyce set his novel and short stories in small city of Dublin. Dubliners published in 1914 is a part of the modernist literature along with the portrait of the artist as a young man and Alice. Okay, thank you. I think this is the last for my presentation. I hope you'll enjoy and happy.